Hi friends, this is Shivangi Anand and the subject expert for today's topic is Dr. Manu Sharma. She has been working as an assistant professor with Amity School of Communication. I welcome you all to a session on functions of a chief sub-editor and a sub-editor. In this session, we will talk about the editorial board and its responsibilities, narrowing down the same to the functions and qualification requirements of a chief sub-editor and a sub-editor. To start with, I can say that, and I hope that most of you would second my opinion on that, to be an editor of any publication is the dream that only few can attain. The functions and responsibilities of an editor or a sub-editor keep on changing as per the needs of an organization, and not everyone is capable of meeting the set criteria.
In the editorial setup, the chief sub-editor, sub-editor, they are very important functionaries. In fact, it is just not the chief sub-editor, there is one more step in between them, that is the senior sub-editor. They three together make the news desk.
If you look at the history, there was a time when there were just few newspapers, and editor in those times was regarded as a royal leader who ruled by the force of his personality, and it won't be incorrect to say that she or he was a terror for his opponents. The editorial board of a newspaper carried more power than it does today. Present day newspapers are more led by the public opinion than they lead it. The major reason behind it is that a newspaper has become a commercial organization rather than a political institution as it used to be in the older days. Moreover, in the present day, the individual opinions of an editor are subject to all the view of his or her colleagues, correspondents, and the members of an editorial board. Now, as far as the editorial board is concerned, it represents the editorial elite of the newspaper. Usually members who are appointed on the basis of seniority, proven journalistic expertise, and loyalty to the paper. An editorial board constitutes of different positions, including an editor-in-chief, chief sub-editor, and several sub-editors responsible for their respective domains. Just for your information, an editorial board has to fulfill a set of responsibilities that include: first, coordinating of the selection and approval process of the editor-in-chief for each mandate. Second, overseeing of the compliance of the editor's duties and replace them if their tasks are not being adequately performed. Third, consciously see that editorial policy is being followed, including changes in mission, scope and focus, target public, visual identity, editorial process, and periodicity. Fourth, serve as ombudsman through a designated spokesperson. Fifth, submit proposal of rules changing to the editorial board council. Before we discuss in detail the functions and qualifications of a chief sub-editor and sub-editors, let's talk in brief about the editor-in-chief. The editor-in-chief should be a student with prior knowledge of the profession and has the power to control the overall tone and content of the publication. Editor-in-chief, with the help of the managing editor, provides the general direction and does the management of the editorial staff. An editor-in-chief is supposed to perform duties like: first, ensure the smooth running of the entire operation. Second, makes decisions regarding content, including decisions about tone, style, design, ethics, etc. Third, oversee production of the newspaper and ensure that all the deadlines are met and pages are ready to be published by the specified deadline. Fourth, organizes and conducts weekly staff meetings to discuss problems, progress, and upcoming events. Fifth, writes an editorial each week or every other week, and usually a new story every week or every other week, that is, provides at least one article a week for 90% of the semester's issues. Sixth, meets weekly with editor to coordinate upcoming publications. Seventh, assists the managing editor in working with staff members to improve news reporting. Eighth, supervise and assists all members of the editorial board and staff writers. Ninth, provides newspapers' front page headlines and design. 10th, Copy edits all articles in every section and links all sections of the paper together. 11th, ensures correct layout for both text and photos. 12th, recruits new staff members. And the list can go on. So, let's get to the main topic of discussion. After the editor-in-chief is the chief sub-editor and is popularly known as chief sub. Chief sub-editor is in charge of the copy desk and assigns and allocates work to various sub-editors working under him and also coordinates and supervises their work. Chief sub-editor is responsible for the production of the newspaper and makes the world come alive in the stories, in the headlines and in the makeup of the newspaper.
Now, let us come to what the chief sub-editor does. Chief sub-editor in reality is the person who is the real master of the newspaper. He is also called in Western countries the copy tester. That means he has to go through each of the copy and decide which copy is to be used for a newspaper or a news organization or not, and which copy is to be thrown. In fact, he goes through thousands of stories in one shift and he rejects almost more than 900 of them. That means the intake is not more than 10% of whatever is troops into a newsroom. So, this is what chief sub-editor does. He, after that, he also goes through the copy edited by the sub-editor and senior sub-editors. He goes through the headlines. If he accepts it, he passes it, or it is his job to improve upon it as per the theme he has decided for a particular page on that day, and that theme changes every day.
So, on the basis of the video clipping, broadly the duties and functions performed by a chief sub-editor include: first, scanning of all the wordage, digest the mass of copy, reject or accept, select or omit and give the best to reader. Second, must have an imagination and an insight to understand political, social, cultural and economic affairs. Third, must have knowledge about the civic bodies, legislature and the court, libel laws, sports and commerce, international affairs and conflicts. Fourth, must be a man of expert judgment on the news values of the reports being handled by him. Fifth, is responsible for instructing the sub-editors on length of the reports and the size and type of the headlines that would be liked by him and their placement in the paper. Due to this reason, at times the chief sub is also called as the layout editor, as has to ensure that the layout and language of the paper are in the order. So, a chief editor does the final checking. Sixth, at times edits to maintain a steady flow of copy.
Chief sub-editor virtually conceptualizes the entire page. Suppose it is a page 1 or any other page, it is the chief sub-editor, he decides what story will go where, whether as the main lead of a page 1, second lead, somewhere in between, or as the anchor, or it has to go into some inner pages. So, chief sub-editor has to decide the entire page layout, he has to conceptualize it, he may also develop a particular theme for a particular page, and according to that he decides how a newspaper is to be produced. That is why editors lay so much stress in selecting a proper and functional effective chief sub-editor, because a good chief sub-editor can brighten up a newspaper, and if he is not so good, it can give the newspaper a virtually different kind of a look. The senior sub-editor is virtually a person who has put in some years, have understood the system in a newspaper, understands what the news is, and takes over the process of selection of the news as well, which sometimes the sub-editor also has to do. That is a different thing, but that is what the senior sub-editor does. And he assists the chief sub-editor in taking decisions in selection of the news. So, he also does the same job as the sub-editor, he also edits, he also gives headlines, and he also helps not only the chief sub-editor but also the editor in many other ways.
Next in the group is a sub-editor. Sub-editor plays an important role in the publication of a newspaper. At the end of the day, quality and style of the newspaper greatly depend on the good work being carried out by the sub-editor. It is the sub-editor who prepares the copy for the printer. Editor on one hand is responsible for the execution of the supreme direction and legal responsibility, but when it comes to the production of a newspaper, the crucial role is played by the sub-editor in the entire process.
Sub-editor is virtually the junior most functionary in a newspaper, but he is supposed to be the senior most to the senior most reporter in an organization, because he is the first reader and he reads, understands and edits a news copy so that it is easily understood by the reader. So, his job, despite being the junior most, is very onerous.
A sub-editor has a lawyer's analytical approach and a quick-mindedness which enables him to understand a story quickly and come to the core of the matter in the most prompt and decisive manner. If editor is the inspiration, sub-editor is the architect and builder in the newspaper.
He takes over the functions of the chief sub-editor when he is not in office. He takes over the functioning also of the senior sub-editor, and sometimes he is the lone master of the newspaper who produces the whole paper.
Now, as far as the working hours of a sub are concerned, they are more regular than those of a reporter, such that he knows it beforehand when he has to report to his duty and when can he enjoy his leisure time. They usually work in shifts depending upon the edition she or he is working for, which can be morning or an evening edition. First, once a newspaper has received its copy from a number of sources like reporters, correspondents, telephone, news agency, reports and verbal communications, the information obtained is filtered by the sub-editor. Second, then a sub-editor is expected to have ability as well as the judgment to understand the news value of each and every place of information received by him. Sub-editor should be able to reduce a lengthy paragraph to its worth or deserving size. Though a sub-editor is not involved in the original writing like an editor, but must know how to revise the news articles, which means to reduce or expand the information as per the paper needs and relevance of story. Third, sub-editor should be able to select the right type of news, that is, what news will go in the paper and that too in what form. Fourth, sub must check the accuracy level of news by cross-checking the facts, rectifying the errors and should try to make the story newsworthy as well as interesting. Fifth, who likes incomplete stories? So, a sub must ensure that the story is complete, is factual and is clear from every angle of readability. Now, over here a big question can be that what a readable writing is. Maybe something that is readable according to me might not be for you. So, we can simplify this subjective concept by stating that the term readability is used to describe the stylistic factors in writing which make it easier to read. It might not be necessarily meaningful to a particular individual. It means using simple words and sentences and reducing the complexity level of a story. It also means overcoming the word and sentences difficulty in terms of frequency of occurrence in the copy, use of affixes and prefixes, and sentence length. Sub should be able to cater to readers' taste by searching for new words and phrases, being direct in his expressions, offering variety in content in simple manner, increasing the visual appeal of content, and using quality and creative language. Sub-editor is responsible for writing the headline for the story, which is a difficult task. Seventh, then sub must check the spellings, names of places and people important for the story, grammar, capitalization and right placement of punctuation marks. Eighth, a sub-editor must know how to gauge the amount of space that will be required by the story. This means examining of the type sizes that are used by the paper and passing on the instructions to the typesetters in the most precise manner, which technically means avoiding oversetting or undersetting of the matter. This is done by putting the crossheads and indicating the same to the line type operators. Ninth, he must have a set of books that should be followed by him like a ritual. Some of them include an Oxford Dictionary of Quotations, Yearbook and Thesaurus, but the list is definitely not fixed. 10th, every newspaper has its own character and style, which is also known as a style sheet. This means that every paper should have uniformity and consistency in the spellings of the words and phrases and names of the people who make news. Sub-editor has to ensure that the content meets these requirements and must consult the style book on regular basis to ensure consistency. 11th, as a part of the supervisory function, a sub carefully reads every story to check for anything that may appear libelous and, if in doubt, would refer to his chief sub-editor or the news editor for the second opinion. 12th, sub should discuss the story with the reporters, as she or he is not directly entitled to make changes in the copy and the confusions must be clarified with the reporter. 13th, then checking the grammatical details does not mean that a sub can avoid being number literate. This means that a sub must know how to check numerical data such as surveys, statistics and the like. Qualifications would include the ability to perform all the functions and responsibilities discussed so far, and they are almost the same, be it the chief sub or a sub. The skills and attributes come from wide reading, from having travelled extensively and from having done a variety of jobs. They come from an insatiable curiosity to know things and how they work. To be precise, it can be said that a good chief or a sub is one who is well read, has sound knowledge of current affairs background, is able to follow mass interest and have a Nordic acquaintance with sectional ones as well, has an analytical mind, is able to visualize how a story may be developed and also its possible impact on the readers, has a good knowledge of the mechanical processes of newspaper production, knows how to summarize a long and tedious report, has an eye for accuracy, is a team man and not a loner, is ready to work for long hours, should have an ability to take quick decisions in a situation demanding it and must be focused, should be able to rewrite a copy, have a good knowledge of laws, be it contempt of court or defamation, should be a sworn enemy of cliché. A sub never presumes that the reader knows about the background of the story and must work on the basis that the reader comes fresh to it. Now, all this doesn't mean that a sub or chief sub should be serious kind of guy. They must have a sense of humor as it enhances the creative abilities. For sub-editors, it can be said that more a person works as a sub, the more they learn and better the sub they become, provided they are ready to learn and correct the errors. And it always pays to have a good mentor, be it any field. Mentoring system helps one to learn from someone's experiences. Be it an editor-in-chief or a chief sub or a sub, all of them have to follow few codes of ethics during the newspaper production process. Some of the basic ones are: the editorial writer should present facts honestly and fully. He should draw objective conclusions from the stated facts, basing them upon the weight of evidence and upon the considered concept of the greatest good. He should never be motivated by personal interest. He should realize that he is not infallible and should give voice to those who disagree with him in public letters column and by other suitable devices. He should review his own conclusions and correct them should he find them based on previous misconceptions. He should have the courage of well-founded conviction and never write anything that goes against his conscience. Also, thoughtful individual opinions should be respected. He should support his colleagues in their adherence to the highest standards of professional integrity. The editor of a newspaper means the person who controls the selection of the matter that is published in a newspaper. The editor is thus responsible for the production of the newspaper, and since he is also personally liable for everything published therein, he should have full freedom to choose what to publish and what not to publish. A newspaper is a private enterprise operating for private profit. In terms of investments in men and machinery and its operation, a modern newspaper unit is like any other commercial undertaking, and commercial considerations, though relevant, should not override editorial considerations. This is something an editor needs to keep in mind. Conflicts may arise between editorial independence and the interest of the proprietor, but then they can always be resolved by demarcating the functions of the proprietor and the editor. The newspapers serve a vital purpose in making available news and views to the community, be it entertainment or some serious national political issue. Editorial independence is of utmost importance if newspapers are to discharge this function satisfactorily. All interferences in this area have to be guarded against, whether through the external or internal pressure. Steps have to be taken to put a check on external pressure. In order to provide an effective safeguard against proprietorial or managerial interferences in editorial independence, it is important to take few measures, like the management should provide job security to the editor, and then an editor should be allowed to have a full control over the journalistic staff. Moreover, editorial policies should be laid down in the most clear and precise manner. Attempt should be made to deal with the extremely complex relation of management and editor. In addition to that, management should make it a point to follow the stringent guidelines being laid by the government to ensure editorial independence. The conditions laid down provide that there shall be 6 independent national directors, and in future, national directors shall not be appointed without the approval of the existing independent national directors. Then, an editor shall not be appointed or dismissed without the approval of the majority of the independent national directors. Third, on would be that the editor shall retain control over any political comment published in his newspaper, and in particular shall not be subject to any restraint in expressing opinion or in reporting news that might directly or indirectly conflict with the opinions or interests of any newspaper proprietors. Fourthly, the editor shall retain control over the appointment and dismissal of journalists and of assigning duties to them, and also of the content of the newspaper. And the disputes between the editors and the management are to be settled by independent national directors. Since we are talking about some of the issues being faced by editors, I think there's one more aspect that cannot be ignored. In addition to the business pursuits of the proprietor, there are several other problems being faced by women sub-editors in India, which affect their efficiency and output. First, one would be the access to the job. There are only 20 to 24% of job opportunities offered in editorial board in the news media to women. Then, negative social attitudes are also a cause of discrimination. A women sub is always supposed to prove her capabilities, and no matter how good they are on constant check. Stating from the entire discussion, one thing is clear, that the job of an editor is not at all a bed of roses.
So, you can understand news dysfunctions are multifarious. It is just not glued to one point. From different points and different kind of editors, they are contributing simultaneously different kind of inputs to brighten up the newspaper, and that gives a special look to the newspaper. The sports editor functions in a different way, various features editors functions in a different way, but they all function in tandem. They are continuously in touch with each other, and they also meet the deadline simultaneously.
Entire discussion can be concluded by saying that the basic purpose of any editing exercise is to make the content able enough to inform, entertain and serve its readers. For the same, it is essential that the chief sub and subs have optimum amount of patience, activeness and judgmental skills so that the end product, which is newspaper, can be produced in a most efficient manner.
Now, when we are talking in terms of editing and we are talking in terms of news desk, we also need to understand the news desk is just not one desk. There can be many more other desks, because there are very many specialized desks in a newspaper, and each of it is headed by maybe a chief sub-editor or maybe even a more senior person than that. And those pages may be on agriculture, maybe on cinema, maybe on business, or maybe on education or any other topic that the editor or that particular editor might have decided. They are called various feature pages. So, these feature pages that are there, they are also part of the entire newspapers. You must have seen there are almost 52 to 60 pages in a newspaper, and each of the page gives a different kind of a fervor. To these specialist editors, they decide on the themes of various other pages, and according to that they decide how the stories are to be done. Then they commission the reporters or the writers or contributors, and from those experts, when the stories come in, the write-ups come in or the articles come in, they decide how it is to be displayed, what kind of photographs is to be used.
Also, an editor must know his audience, because this knowledge will directly influence the type of publication being produced. So, if you are looking for this fascinating and challenging job in media, besties, hope you have enjoyed the session. I'll see you again with another interesting session related to media studies. Till then, goodbye.